Hello and welcome. In today's video, we will be looking at a new feature that will be coming soon to all Vcad for ACC users. We're calling it Vcad Runtime Federations. With Vcad Runtime Federations, you will be able to load multiple models in a single view or instance based on the selections made in your reports. Let's have a look at how that works. For starters, I've opened up my Vcad for ACC file manager, and I'm going to navigate to the folder that contains the models I want to be federating. So inside of my videos folder, I have a federated hospital folder, which includes 3 files. I have 3 Navisworks files over here. I have an architectural, an MEP, and a structural of a hospital. And I want to be able to render these 3 distinct models into a single Vcad instance in my report. So first off, I want to make sure that all 3 of my models have been imported into Vcad. This means that the files have been processed and that the datasets are ready to be used in my report. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on the Federation button and access the Federation definition page. Here I can create a new federation and decide what models to include into it. So for starters, let's create a new federation. I'm going to call this my first federation test federation. Let's go ahead and save. Okay, so I've created my first federation. For now, there's not much to it. I have a description, but importantly, I do have a federation GUID. So this is the identifier of my federation, and it is what will be used to create my report and to then access the data inside of that report. Of course, before we can go further, we actually need to decide what models to include in my federation. So for now, let's just go ahead and let's add the MEP and the structural files to my federation. I'm being prompted to save my new federation, so I'm going to go ahead and save. And so right now, what we could actually do is we could go ahead and we could download the template for this new model federation I've created. But instead of doing that, let's have a look at the actual model positioning. So if we go over to the alignment section, I want to make sure that the models are correctly positioned in relation to one another. So here I have a bit of a preview, and I can see my architectural model is here just fine, but I need to find there we go. Looks like the MEP file is all the way down. So I want these two to sort of intersect better. So to do that, there's several ways to interact with the models. Let's go ahead and let's just select the actual model graphically. And again, I could change the values over here if I have already precise values that I want to apply, or I can simply drag all the way until the positioning looks right. And here you can invest a lot of time. Looks like the rotation is incorrect. So let's try just rotating it slightly. Let's do -7. That looks like it's a little too much. We can try -3. Not quite enough. -5 can work for now. Okay, so as I said here, we could spend a lot of time fiddling around with the positioning of the models. For the purposes of what we're doing right now, this is perfectly fine. So we want to go ahead and save this new alignment and then switch back to the definition page. Now we can go ahead and we can download the template for this federation. The templates for my federated models work exactly how I'm used to when working with Vcad. So I have selected my federation, I have access to one or several templates, and I can simply go ahead and download the template. The downloaded template, let's go ahead and open it up, will include the Vcad custom visual already configured to render my models, and all of the extracted data coming from all of the models included in my federation. And importantly, the data from all those models has been merged into a single data set. So I can work with the data seamlessly without needing to worry about which model includes with which data. I of course have that information if I want to filter data based on the origin model, but I'm not forced to worry about this level of detail when I'm interacting with the data from my model. So we can see the initial loading of the data has been completed, and now we can review the information coming from our federation. So right out the bat, we know we have about 91K assets in my model, so that's distinct objects in my two models, pardon me, and I have about 4.5 million properties coming from those federated models. So quite a bit of data. Depending on the sort of report we want to create, we may want to filter that data out beforehand, but for what we're doing right now, it's just fine. Now, interestingly, I'm federating Navisworks files here. Of course, Navisworks on their own are used to federate models. So what I can see is, if I have a look at the federated file names over here, I have my MEP and I have my structural, which are the models that I had in ACC. And if I have a look at the source file name, these are the names of the actual files included in my original Navisworks. So we can see here we have the electrical, we have our mechanical, and we have the plumbing that go and constitute my MEP, and then finally I have the structural Revit that is included in my structural Naviswork. So this offers us a lot of choice on how to interact with both the models and the data. And speaking of which, let's have a look at the model info page, where we can review the actual rendering, make sure that everything went correctly in the definition of the federation, and that my alignment information is also being loaded, which we want to make sure. So we can see here we're loading 2 out of 2 models. As soon as the MEP is loaded in, we can actually have a look. And we can see that, yes, so the alignment information has been brought in correctly as we expected. So the 2 models are aligned. And the nice thing is I can actually start and interact with the 2 models right away. The feature set remains absolutely the same. So now I've selected the MEP model, and we can see only my MEP model is being highlighted. I could actually go ahead and I can hide completely the data which I'm not interacting with, so the structural data will be hidden. And then of course I can navigate, and inside of the MEP I can focus on, for example, only the plumbing. This gives us, as I said, a lot of freedom. Let's go ahead and let's reactivate everything, and we can see that we have all of the tools we're used to playing with when we're using Vcad. So we can filter the data, we can highlight the data, we can use markers, we can do things like highlight the models. So here, for example, we are highlighting the 2 models, we are highlighting the geometries from the 2 models based on which model they're coming from. So my MEP data is in red, and my structural geometries instead are being highlighted in green. So great stuff to see. Let's have a quick look at how we can actually update this information and update our report to keep in line with the progress of the work that we were doing. So let's switch back to the file manager. And over here, now let's go ahead and let's add the actual architectural model in. So I'm going to, of course, select the architectural model and then save my changes. Next up, I want to make sure that the alignments are what I expect, or if not, I can go ahead and I can move things around. So everything's loaded in. It looks like the actual architectural model is already correctly aligned. As I said here, we could really play around and make sure that everything is perfectly aligned. For what we're doing right now, this will do great. Or actually, what we could do, let's actually do this. Let's go ahead and let's divide up my models. So let's imagine I want to spread the models out as if they were different areas of a same project, for example. So let's go ahead and select the structural model. And as I said, I could here type in the values that I want to add, or if I want to make big changes, I can just go ahead and drag them over. Okay, so now I have my 3 models next to each other. All I need to do is I want to save. And if we switch back to the definition, we can see that we've made a lot of changes to the federation. The federation identifier, however, remains the same, which means that if we switch to our report and now we refresh the data, we don't need to do any work on our actual report to load in the new model and to load in the information coming from the new model. Simply refresh the data set and all of the information will be loaded, including the alignment information. This means that we can start creating a report even before the project is complete. Even before I have all of the BIM files I'm going to need to be rendering in, I can start setting everything up, and then I can go and add to the federation as my project progresses. So here we can see we're downloading quite a bit more data. We've passed 5 million, we're at about 6 million properties coming from all three. Performance is still good. Of course, I can choose what level of detail I want to interact with the data and filter it if I need to. Let's go ahead and let's switch tabs real quick. That way we give the viewer a chance to start all over with the new information that we have. And that way we're sure that everything is loaded in correctly. Okay, so this time we're seeing we're loading in 1 out of 3. So we have our architectural model over here, 2 out of 3, and 3 out of 3. Okay, so we have our actual 3 models loaded in. You will notice that only parts of the architectural and the MEP model are being highlighted. That is, of course, because we've passed our asset limit cap. So we can see down here we're selecting only 90,000 objects, even though we have about 147,000 objects in the selection. So 2 ways to go about it. Either we reduce the data set by simply making selections and choosing which models we want to be interacting with through the report interaction. Or, of course, we have a simple option here. If we select our custom visual, head on over to the viewer options. Here we have our max selection count. We can actually increase that. Let's bring it up to 150K. And so now the number of selected asset will be way within the limit that we've set. And so we can see that all 3 are being completely highlighted. As always, we have access to all of the features, so we can review, of course, the data from different models, even though in this case it's fairly simple to understand. And we can interact like we did before with a single model or with subsets of data coming from multiple models all at once. Really depends on what you're trying to achieve with your reports. Okay, this was a first look at how federations can be defined in Vcad and how simple it is to create reports based on these federations. These reports can be helpful in many scenarios, including large model management and cross-discipline collaboration. In the next video, we will be looking at some extra features we can use when rendering federations and some interesting tips for these type of reports. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more Vcad federation content coming in the next videos.